It's a secret. You know, you look like a man, but you sound like a lady.
Bewitched! Obeying the case!
The impact of MADtv cannot be overstated. You could say that it launched the career of one Keegan-Michael Key and one Jordan Peele, both superstars in their own right, and best known of course for their involvement in epic rap battles of history. Two of them, and nothing else. Culturally, the other big thing that MADtv is known for is... Thank you so much for watching! Please like and subscribe! Okay. I know that all you die-hard MADtv fans, all 12 of you, are super angry with me right now. Don't worry, I am one of you. This comedy sketch show ran for 14 years from 1995 to 2009, and was even popular enough to warrant a reboot back in 2016. But even with its longevity and popularity, it feels like we don't hear too much about this show anymore. This Vulture article chronicling MADtv's history called it the sketch show that never quite changed comedy. Damn. But really though, despite getting millions of views on TV as well as re-uploads on YouTube, despite having read a gazillion YouTube comments at this point, they're just like, MADtv is so much funnier than SNL. Despite having an insanely talented cast of comedy juggernauts throughout the years, I feel like I don't hear about or feel the impact of MADtv around these parts. By which I mean, where are the passionate and thriving online fan communities doing tournament brackets about which skit or which character is the best? Where are the 1 to 7 hour video essays and retrospectives recapping every episode and each character? Now what am I going to watch during lunch? Why do I not encounter MADtv in like internet memes or pop culture discussions or shitposts or memes the same way that I do with like Family Guy or Saturday Night Live or Key and Peele? As for me, for all its immature and edgy humor, I grew up loving MADtv and just needed to share these thoughts with someone, which is why I made this video in the first place. But I also feel like I have to recognize the aspects which were, you know, didn't age well, like, oh, that's not, yikes. And so I want to track what made MADtv so memorable to the legions of people, especially kids and teenagers, why it fell off, and I'll try to make a case as to MADtv being a show that deserves a second look. If anything, just to recognize the comedic talent behind it. And lastly, I've done this before in another video, but I think it's especially applicable here. Just so that we can have a little bit of fun, I'm just gonna take a shot every time I have to allude to the callous unwokeness and mean-spiritedness of the late 90s to 2000s. I'll get us a head start.
Come on!
In every discussion of MADtv, it's kind of inevitable that its much older and more prestigious and refined sibling Saturday Night Live gets brought up. And honestly, from the very beginning, these two shows were like this. Or more like this, I guess. What is this? In 1994, after nearly 20 years of being on air, NBC was concerned about Saturday Night Live's declining ratings, relevance, and critical reception. The show was doing so poorly that it was very close to getting cancelled. So, all the networks, including Fox, were looking at NBC with bloodlust in their eyes. SNL was described as the wounded zebra, so some new show could take its place and be the young lion ready to pounce. At the same time, there was Mad Magazine, a satire magazine started in the 1950s that originally made fun of comics, but would expand to tackling things like politics, war, societal issues, movies, TV, advertisements, and celebrity culture, all in a funny, mocking, and even edgy and subversive way, especially in the early years. Anyway, the television rights to Mad Magazine would be bought by legendary music producer Quincy Jones and David Salzman. Those two were then approached by In Living Color writers Adam Small and Fax Barr with ideas for a Mad Magazine sketch show.
And I think our pitch was different than anybody else's because we said the show should have nothing to do with the magazine.
Okay.
So we said the show, the only thing we want to take from the magazine is that you can do a commercial parody, you can do a straight sketch, you can do a movie parody, you can do anything because each page it turns and it's completely different. So the structure could be crazy.
And really, they kept true to this, with not a lot of connective tissue between the Mad magazine and what would eventually become MADtv. They did use the Alfred E. Newman branding, Alfred E. Newman being the known face of the Mad magazine brand, and they also did initially have these little animations of a segment called Spy vs. Spy, a very popular staple of Mad magazine. But these Spy vs. Spy animations were gradually phased out early on in the show's run. Fox would pick up MADtv, and the show would premiere on October 14, 1995. They hired a bunch of writers, including a young Patton Oswalt before his career really took off, and also hired a bunch of cast members. Now, whenever people get nostalgic or reminiscent for MADtv, they always remember the cast and how amazing and funny and talented they were. And they were. Now, I want to highlight a handful of cast members through the years who I think really made their mark. But trust me, there are so many more great ones. Let's start from the original cast, Season 1. Artie Lang.
I hate myself. I'm filled with such an incredible amount of self-loathing that I can't stand to be in a clear state of mind for more than an hour and a half.
An original cast member who was probably one of the first to really make a name for himself outside of MADtv, specifically with a stint as a staff member on Howard Stern's show from 2001 to 2009. He's also known nowadays for his tragic life story and his very public struggle with addiction and sobriety. He's still thankfully with us, and I just wish him the best. Phil Lamar.
I have to come down there. I swear, I will kill that little thing, tear its heart out, and shove it down your throat. I will.
Right out the gate, he had some pretty notable recurring characters that were used early on, and he would stay on Mad for a while, but he would become really successful as a voiceover artist for animated shows. You very likely know him as Samurai Jack, and as the Green Lantern and Static across the DC animated universe, among many others. He's just one of those insanely prolific voiceover artists. Nicole Sullivan.
A question? Would you, oh. Is it a question?
Supposedly, she was brought onto Mad for her affability and likability. She was hired because the showrunners wanted someone who, quote, the audience would like to have dinner with. It seems kind of dismissive of her comedic abilities, to be honest, but go off. She's fantastic and responsible for some of Mad's most iconic characters, and also one of my favorite Mad sketches, which is Cooking for One, in which she plays a TV chef who gets more and more frustrated over the fact that she is single.
So hard to concentrate over the sound of my biological clock ticking. I don't know how many more times I can hit the snooze bar on that sucker, you know what I mean?
Great performance. Deborah Wilson.
Bitch! We've called him bitch. Let me tell you something. I let you call me a bitch at home, okay? But you best not be calling me no bitch on this news show.
Hey! Okay, she is the GOAT of MADtv. She is a comedy titan. Her range is insane. She's one of those cast members I've always looked up to for her ability to do impressions. This Whitney Houston one still gets brought up as an all-time favorite sketch.
I'm just smoking on the Dr. Coupe, getting high.
Or this impression of Oprah, which got a lot of acclaim.
My house with no pants on all day long. You know, big brother's gut hanging out, drinking Red Bull, eating fudge. I've had it. Do you feel me? Do you feel me?
She would go on to reprise this role in The Proud Family and Scary Movie 4. In fact, the impression was so good that she was in serious talks for playing Oprah Winfrey in a biopic. And she's a great singer too, which she doesn't get enough praise for. She could hit those high notes like no one's business. Listen to this insane impression of Mariah. Iconic. Your fave pop girl could never. Beyond the original cast, we have Will Sasso.
Safe and happy holiday.
Now, he's another great cast member. I'd call him the comedian's comedian. I've heard his name get brought up when talking about uncannily good celebrity impressions, like this impression of Randy Newman on MADtv.
Let's all eat a bunch of lunch. I'm hungry, 'cause I'm hungry.
It was so memorable that he reprised it for an episode of Screen Junkie's Honest Trailers in 2015. He was also known for his really good impressions of Steven Seagal.
All I want to do is walk the stupid path of peace, but you're forcing me to walk the path of pieces.
And Kenny Rogers, which is a massive fan favorite.
Of impressions. I just don't think you should be making people look like they're crazy, deranged alcoholics. That's
Cut.
Hey, what the is with this messed up show anyway? First of all, there's no black sambuca in my dressing room like I asked for. Then...
Among many others. And also, you kids probably know him from this Vine. Like, I'm not even kidding. This Vine is even mentioned on his Wikipedia page. Alex Borstein.
Many men hear only what they say, but not him. This one's different, this one's special. Just try not to blow it.
Got her start on MADtv, playing one of the most iconic characters. She would later win 2 Emmys playing Susie Meyerson in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. But her real big break came because of MADtv. According to Phil Lamar, a Fox executive had called in a favor from some of the Mad cast, specifically Phil and Alex, to do some voice work for a 15-minute animated pilot by some unknown guy. That guy being Seth MacFarlane, and that animated pilot ended up becoming Family Guy. And the role that Alex Borstein would of course be so widely known for the world over, one of the most famous and memed on animated women of all time, Trisha Takanawa, and no one else. Alex would also serve as a writer for several Family Guy episodes, basically helping shape internet culture as we know it. For more on how that happened, watch my video on it. Michael McDonald.
About venereal disease, or kids may call it Sif, the clap, and crotch rot.
Notable for being the cast member who stayed with MADtv the longest, also playing one of the most iconic characters that he himself had developed. I primarily remember him for being a really good straight man or comedic foil to the more outrageous characters, but he was just great all around. He was super talented, writing a lot of the skits that he himself had been a part of, and in fact, advocating for actors getting credited for the sketches that they had written. So he was clearly a very positive force for the cast, ensuring a more fair workplace. Mo Collins, another goated comedian.
On today's show, I am being forced to free my slaves and give them a fashion makeover.
I am just in awe of her skills. She just disappears into every role she inhabits. She does it all, from uncanny impressions with a number of music video parodies, to also playing some of the most recognizable and consistently funny characters on the show. Even though she's done a number of outrageous and even provocative things during her time on the show, she faced quite a bit of sexist bullshit as a female cast member. Like on a podcast, she talks about this story where she was in hair and makeup for the first time.
I'm sitting in the chair, and this was a message that came down from above.
Okay.
We need to raise your fuckability quotient.
Whoa.
Like, I thought I was coming to do comedy.
Yikes. But joke's on them. I remember reading so many YouTube comments talking about how gorgeous and how sexy and how beautiful Mo Collins was, even at her silliest. And as Mo herself puts it,
what they failed to understand is that our fans did find us sexy.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were funny. Every one of us.
Stephanie Weir.
Very hard for you to believe, but... Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Another long-running cast member. She had a lot of great moments, a lot of really memorable characters, still remembered quite fondly for her run on the show. And I really wanted to highlight this one impersonation she did of 90s to 2000s tabloid fixture Anna Nicole Smith, because to my teenage self, this was like the funniest performance ever. Listen, I know Anna Nicole Smith's story is so tragic with her untimely passing and all that, but at the time in the 2000s, I was just,
A beautiful duet, cause he's freaking genius.
Thank you. Back to you, James Brown. And if you ever produce an album, I love you because you're freaking genius.
Okay, moving on. Nicole Parker.
World, if you are infused with enough cash to afford a 3-story brownstone on the Upper West Side with a live-in chef, nanny, and service elevator, which I am.
Now, she was an absolute gem in the later seasons. She also had a lot of standout moments. A fan favorite skit was this one of her presenting a PowerPoint that she put together while drunk.
I have found that if we eliminate our Hyatt conferences and we increase our teleconferences.
Plus, she just killed every impression that she did. Here's one of her doing Ellen DeGeneres.
Wow. Sprint, huh? I don't use Sprint. Yeah, I use their competitor. That's slow jog.
And another one in the same skit of her doing Britney Spears.
And I cleverly rewrote the lyrics so that it's a song about telephones. Ring, 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 ring.
Just like Deborah Wilson, Nicole Parker was also a really good singer and having a lot of opportunities to sing on the show. And even after Mad, performing as Elphaba on Wicked on Broadway for a 6-month run. I hear the kids are really into Wicked now for some reason. Bobby Lee.
Don't need no whistling at me. Animal face. No. You don't need no whistling. Holla.
And if you're on like this corner of the internet, you know, the commentary, terminally online corner, Bobby Lee might be one of the more familiar cast members to you. He was hired in the middle of Mad's run, and from how he tells it, he kind of had a hard time of things. He was seen as this comedy rookie or a noob by the cast and crew, and he had a very poor self-image at the time, so he overcompensated behind the scenes by partaking in wild, outrageous, borderline unacceptable behaviors. Oh, this is getting too relatable. I will say, Bobby was kind of limited in his ability to do good celebrity impressions, so I did notice an uptick of skits which just banked on Bobby Lee's likability and charisma as a person, like Bobby Lee as himself in a parody of Man vs. Wild, or Bobby Lee as himself in a parody of 24. Anyway, years after MADtv ended, Bobby channeled that outrageous behavior into a pretty apt outlet, and would go on to become a pretty big name in the podcasting space with 2 wildly successful comedy podcasts, Tiger Belly and Bad Friends. For some, especially the younger crowd, he kind of is the face of MADtv. And he seems to be doing well now, so that's cool. And finally, Keegan-Michael Key.
But it's not a miracle drug, it can't cure gay. And I was like, what? And he's like, you heard me, Tinkerbell? It can't cure gay. I was like, well, what's your problem?
And Jordan Peele.
17, baby. 17 and buttery like a biscuit. You know what I'm talking about? Filthy in the mind, too, you know?
Now, I hesitate to group these two together because they're both so legendary individually, but these two guys' comedy careers are inextricable from each other. Jordan and Keegan met before MADtv in 2003 and became, as one source put it, comedy life partners. Their chemistry together was something else. I noticed how a lot of sketches paired the two of them together. This turned out to be by design. As Keegan himself stated,
Jordan Peele, with his ever-tactical mind, suggested that we write the lion's share of our scenes together so that we would become a valuable and inseparable unit, and would therefore both be indispensable.
One standout skit that was also a favorite of many was this Deal or No Deal parody.
Smack! What?
Now, I'm usually terrible at predictions, but I remember watching this for the first time and thinking, this is not the last time we would see those guys. their energy, their physicality. It was just on a whole nother level. Shortly after MADtv ended, both Key and Peele would go on to create Key and Peele, a sketch comedy show that would go on from 2012 to 2015. Now, the thing about Key and Peele is, despite being on air for a shorter time, its legacy towers over MADtv. Now, I love Key and Peele. Who doesn't? Granted, I only ever watched Key and Peele through YouTube clips, but if I'm being perfectly honest, I think a lot of people will agree that Key and Peele was just a better show, a funnier show than MADtv was. A part of it may just be that Key and Peele sketches were like better structured. Every skit I've seen of them nail the whole escalation to the final punchline thing. They're just so good. Anyway, after Key and Peele would end, Keegan would go on to make an even bigger name for himself as a performer in movies and TV, while Jordan Peele would go on to become an Oscar-winning director, producer, and writer for some of the most acclaimed horror movies of the 21st century. Now for Jordan, the road to get to that point was pretty rocky, and MADtv may have contributed to that. We'll get to that in a bit. So I only highlighted a small handful of performers on here, but I had to cut a lot out just for the sake of time. I didn't even get to the other fantastic performers that some of them are my personal favorites, like Mary Shear.
I told him, Mishima, all I want for Christmas are my 2 front teeth, the face of a Norwegian schoolgirl, and boobs that can double as airbags. Ah!
Ari Spears.
Christmas!
Hi, I'm Magic Johnson, and welcome to my fake house. Now, I'm about to get celebrity-like.
Pat Kilbane.
But don't worry, Tuca will get hers, and we'll get ours. And the day that we get ours will be the same day that Tuca gets hers, and trust me, we'll all be there.
Frank Caliendo.
I'm gonna kick him in the ass! Hey folks, John Madison! Popcorn popper. It's simple, Fred.
I didn't say it yet.
Go f yourself!
Ike Barinholtz.
It's not rain, it's my spit. You look so stupid right now.
Nicole Randall Johnson.
You know what, sir? I do not have the time to verbally pugilize with you, sir. I have the skills and the booty and the gorgeous hair, but I do not have the time.
Well, I'm not verbally
now you ready to make a full payment and do the thing that does if anyone says that.
And Krista Flanagan.
Our ice cream is done.
All of them, plus all the other cast members I didn't even mention, super talented in their own right. But it really does feel like these folks were massively overshadowed by the careers and legacy of the performers at SNL. It almost felt like being on MADtv was more of a liability to getting work in Hollywood.
First of all, I was like, well, MADTV's over, I'll just get my own pilot. Everyone's got and like people were like, "Oh no, we hate you. We hate MADtv. Like, we don't fucking give a shit about you."
Yeah, it was actually an embarrassing thing. People go, "Oh, he's from MADtv." Like it was a negative thing.
Really? At the time, yes.
Yes.
Now, what I've learned is that younger people, I think, do have more of an appreciation for it. Like
in the same time period that MADtv was airing, SNL would have people in their cast like Will Ferrell, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Andy Samberg, Kristen Wiig, all of whom would become household names in the world of film and TV. So while we're still on the subject of SNL, when I was young, I would catch glimpses of Saturday Night Live as it was playing in like the background or something. And for someone who was that young and not even American or living in the US, a lot of the topical, political, or cultural references of SNL were just like whoosh right over my head. It's just like I guess the humor just didn't resonate with me. If you'd have asked 11-year-old me what I thought of SNL, I would have told you, go away, I'm playing The Sims. And then I would have described SNL as dry. Because in my memory, a large majority of SNL skits were just actors and the occasional celebrity guest just kind of sitting down and looking at the camera and reciting their lines off of cue cards. And honestly, it's only ever been in recent years that I kind of realized that that version of SNL is good, actually. The commentary, the delivery, and especially the performances by these super talented people, It just took me some maturing to realize that. But really, I just wanted to highlight all that because I think it's indicative of the major constraints of the live format. And take note, when I was watching this back in 2005, this was right at the cusp of the Lonely Island era and digital shorts, in what could have possibly been a move to be more flexible with their comedy, to get away from the live format that was holding them back. However, from the beginning, MADtv was always pre-taped. Nothing on Mad aired live, so it did not have such constraints. Some skits were shot and performed in front of a live audience, some skits were pre-taped and then shown in front of an audience to get the laugh track. So many skits relied on physical humor. They could primarily rely on actors and their big movements and physicality. They could also do retakes, and in fact had entire segments where they just let the actors improv and go off script, and they would just fix it in post. And I think this approach imbued some of the skits with this manic, frenetic energy that you just can't replicate when doing live. Also, the humor of the whole show was just kind of all over the place. You certainly couldn't say that MADtv as a whole was predictable. There are times you could never tell which direction a skit would go or how it would end. It also felt like Mad could get really daring and even experimental with different kinds of humor. One skit that's lived rent-free in my brain was this one, which starts out like a pithy little skit about a family.
Yeah, honey? Who do you love more, me or Joe? Joe?
And then it just stops halfway to cut to the actress who the sketch was about.
And that little girl grew up to be MADTV's Mo Collins.
Son of a bitch!
And the skit becomes her reaction to the skit.
And I will
Never! Ever! Forgive you for this! Stop!
I did not expect MADtv to get more meta than a Spike Jonze movie, but here we are. Some humor just straight up seemed nonsensical. There was one series of sketches where they recreated old sitcoms but speaking Spanish in bad accents, like this one for Gilligan's Island.
¿Dónde está la fiesta? Mira, Firstin, no estamos tarde.
Sí, yo veo, amore.
Hey, ¿por qué ellos tienen el suitcase?
It's a super admirable effort from the cast to have to do impressions while speaking Spanish. But why is the joke that they're speaking Spanish? I don't get it. When being compared to SNL, words that have been used to describe MADTV's humor is lowbrow, and edgy, and reverent, and sucks balls. And I mean, yeah, MADtv is all of those things. Except this one, I don't know where that came from. MADtv was shameless. Like, a lot of skits would rely on toilet humor,
Hey, this is roast beef.
gross out humor, shock humor, like the kind of humor that would just kind of leave you speechless. We'll get to that. Or just plain old dark comedy, and I do mean dark. One skit that stuck out to me was this fake infomercial of a spokesperson selling a family on radioactive Christmas lights. It then cuts to a family having radiation poisoning. The sketch is already so twisted, but then the skit ends with a spokesperson doing this. I honestly laughed so hard when I first saw this as a teenager. Look at his little dance, he's so happy. So now I want to talk about a staple of televised sketch comedy, and those are recurring characters. This is a practice borrowed from some improv comedy acts where if you have a character that works, usually with a specific personality or distinct catchphrases or mannerisms, you reuse or rework that character into a different act. MADtv relied on recurring characters a lot, a whole lot. In fact, some of the more popular characters would appear in 30 to 40 different skits throughout the duration of the show. Whenever people remember MADtv, they likely think about the recurring characters because some of them were just that memorable. So I think it's worth going through some of them here. But trust me, there were many others. Kathy, or a character who became known as the Vancom Lady, played by Nicole Sullivan, a nasty, mean-spirited, super shady diva.
Obviously have no respect for these hostages. Don't you understand? Plain clothes cop doesn't necessarily mean plain clothes. I don't want to break your heart, but I'm not that drunk and you're not that pretty, so hands off.
Was also just kind of a horrible person.
Okay. I guess that would be the downside of steroids, wouldn't it? Or maybe it's just cold in here, I don't know.
I guess since you're such a racist, you wouldn't pick me.
Well, sure I would. Out of a lineup.
That's obviously pretty irreverent, pretty close to the bone. Somehow not the only racist recurring character that Nicole Sullivan would play for MADtv. You obviously couldn't get away with this now because, you know, it's the 2000s. Cheers. Actually, you know what?
You know what?
And the Drag Race fans will catch this. The Vancom Lady kind of reminds me a lot of Bianca Del Rio.
What do you do successfully? Quickly.
Moving on. There was Lorraine, played by Mo Collins, an extremely awkward and socially oblivious Midwestern woman who, according to Mo, just kind of makes sounds to keep the conversation going without really saying anything of value.
Think about it. See, give her a look, see, huh?
I didn't say it.
Oh, 1350, huh?
And obviously there's a lot of physical slapstick humor and funny mouth sounds thrown in, which Mo Collins just owns. There's Coach Hines, played by Keegan-Michael Key. This extremely competitive, hard-ass coach with violent tendencies.
I swear this chalk's going up your nose and out your finger, and that's impossible!
Who, like Lorraine, uses a lot of broad physical humor because, oh my god, Keegan's legs. Prehistoric Glamazon Huntress's 80. This is a personal favorite of mine. It's supposed to be a send-up of those fantasy series like Xena Warrior Princess that were big in the 90s, but it's meant to feel super cheap and shoddy and poorly made. The actresses are all great, with their intentionally inept and hammy acting.
I did not know that with flora and fauna, you could make rain.
You are not a scientist. From the future, as I am.
Maybe it's just because I always loved stylistic suck, and it's always just going to be endearing to me no matter what the form. MADtv has actually quite a number of these recurring segments where they try to mock amateurish productions by being intentionally bad or campy, and those were always so much fun for me. Luann Lockhart, played by Krista Flanagan, another personal favorite of mine. The hook of this character is that she's this stand-up comedian who is terrible at comedy and is constantly nervous.
What's going on with Santa riding around in a sleigh? A sleigh!
And what follows for the next 4 minutes is a really daring display of anti-humor and meta-humor that feels weirdly ahead of its time. And Krista just shines in this skit. Darrell, played by Nicole Randall Johnson.
Yeah, I just want to let you know, the back of your head is ridiculous.
This one is interesting because I think this particular sketch mainly got big when an upload of this skit on YouTube went viral. It shows a guy being really pushy to a woman stranger in a movie theater. Now, obviously, this isn't the deepest sketch ever, but it was carried entirely by Nicole Randall Johnson's energy and hilarious delivery.
Yeah, my little croissant, little cheese on my croissant. Yeah.
It probably felt very relatable to any woman who happened to watch this skit. I also find it so interesting that Darrell was played by a woman at all. Drag king icon, honestly. Bon Qui Qui, played by Angela Johnson, a sassy Latina working in customer service.
Need to go.
Sir, she was trying to fight me, sir.
No, I wasn't. Well, I will cut
You.
There was only ever this one skit of this character toward the very end of the show's run, but like Darrell, Bon Qui Qui got viral on YouTube, to the extent that Angela Johnson was able to play this character again in songs, videos, reboots, and even Johnson's own stand-up specials. Dot Goddard, played by Stephanie Weir.
Gloves have to come in twos. Jesus said so, just like on Noah's Ark.
She's great. Her whole thing is that she's like a kid who embodies the absolute unhinged, unfilteredness, and attention-seeking behavior of children. This is how Stephanie got the idea for Dot.
It was, I think just watching like an Oprah thing and seeing a genius kid on Oprah and then wondering what the sibling was like was the genesis of that. And then I thought, oh, it'd be funny if they were twins and one was smart and dumb. So that was the original. And that was the first sketch I wrote at MADtv.
And it's played so earnestly and so sincerely that that's honestly what kind of makes it fun.
If I had a nickel, I'd swallow it, and then tomorrow I could be an ATM machine.
Now, of course, we save the two most famous characters for last. Stuart Larkin, played by Michael McDonald.
Look what I can do.
If Dot Goddard represented the loud, attention-seeking nature of kids, Stuart is like the weird, off-putting, avoidant side of children, with like hidden, scary depths.
Does anything make you mad?
Yes.
What makes you mad, Stuart?
The world.
Honestly, what really sells these skits is Michael's performance. From the physical comedy of seeing this tall, huge man in a child's wardrobe, and like, oh my god, the falsetto voice.
Little boys who lie should expect tragedy to visit them on a regular basis.
I've watched so many skits of Michael's performances throughout Mad, and it is impossible for me still to picture this guy and this guy being the same person, but Michael pulled it off. And shout out too to Doreen Larkin, Stuart's mom, played by Mo Collins. She's less of a comedic foil or straight man, but is also a very funny and well-developed character in her own right, with a really distinct way of speaking that's just so fun and addictive to listen to.
Oh, there he is. He's over by the snack shack. Stuart! Stuart, you come on over here right now and meet your coach!
And you can't picture one without the other. She and Stuart work so well off each other. This is great. And finally, we have our problematic fave. Emphasis on problematic. Miss Swan, played by Alex Borstein.
Okay, what thing?
You know the thing that you can do. You push and all the things everybody do.
The socially oblivious, largely incoherent, and perpetually confused beauty salon worker.
Hi.
It's kind of hard to pin down what exactly made Miss Swan the most popular character on Mad. I think what made her so likable was this childlike innocence she had. We all know this clueless and well-intentioned older woman in our lives. In fact, Alex Borstein talked about how many people said that Miss Swan reminded them of their own grandmothers from different cultures. But there is one particular group that Miss Swan reminded them of, which we'll circle back to that. So those are the huge recurring characters, and there are just so many I didn't even mention, like the UPS guy, or Stan the Coffee guy, or Bonifa Latifa Halifa Sharifa Jackson, or Angela Wright. Another thing I want to talk about is the other thing that MADtv got known for, which is the skewering of pop culture properties. See, from what I could tell, Saturday Night Live would not go out of their way to mock or ridicule a trending pop culture property like a movie or a TV show. I mean, a lot of their buzz comes from celebrity guest hosts who were in those movies or TV shows, so SNL wouldn't want to upset them. Like, imagine if in 2025 SNL were to do a parody of Wicked, right? And they would put together a skit about how stupid the premise was and how ugly the visual effects were and ridicule their terrible performances. SNL just wouldn't do that. Part of it is that they probably wouldn't want to harshly criticize their celebrity guest hosts, and more importantly, the studio execs, they don't want to make their films look bad. disrespecting the Hollywood elite, SNL would never. But MADtv would! Okay, so MADtv did have celebrity guests like Ryan Reynolds before he was in any superhero movie, and Mark Hamill, and Susan Sarandon. Certainly legends in their own right, but not necessarily trending celebrities at the time. Plus, as a guest, they would only have a much more diminished role compared to being a host of an SNL episode. So when it came to pop culture parodies, whether it be movies or TV, Mad would get ruthless. This skit parodying the show Felicity took the opening premise of the show with what if a girl changes colleges to be with her crush?
You transfer colleges to obsess over a guy you don't even know? What the hell kind of premise for a show? I mean, decision is that?
But you did sign my yearbook.
And so you transferred here based on that? What kind of a premise for a show, for a decision is that?
And takes it to a crazy extreme. Like, what if she's a dangerous stalker? This Sex and the City skit just portrays the central four characters as crazed nymphomaniacs while also juxtaposing the smart, independent woman angle of the show to essentially mock it.
Sluts in the City is the smartest show on television. Smart writing flows Bob Guccione.
It's cheap humor. It's kind of weird now. It was the 2000s.
The Sopranos. This program has been edited for content.
The Sopranos video from MADtv is an often cited favorite. It's really clever and has some really good editing, which definitely could not have been done live. The premise is that the TV show The Sopranos is edited down and censored to be appropriate for all ages, and...
I'm not talking to him, he's a
Hey, watch your
I'm a racist
over here dating the mother.
Or this High School Musical sketch, which is like, what if Stick to the Status Quo, that musical number, was about teenager secrets that became way too real and absolutely horrific? I'm not even gonna play audio for this because it gets so dark, but I'm just going to say SNL would never. Another thing that MADtv was great at that SNL never really did, direct parodies of music videos, like the pop songs that would be played on MTV. Mad would recreate sets, write new parody lyrics to make fun of the artists, mix and master the music, and put vocals and harmonies on top, and shoot all of that with actors, all for a 3 to 5 minute skit. There was a lot of work that went into those. Here are some notable ones. This kind of cringy Britney Spears parody of I'm Not a Girl, Not Yet a Woman, which just has a bunch of sexual innuendos and references. Sex sexists. That's it. That's the joke. And also, shout out to the absolute horn dog in the audience who keeps cheering her on. Because, oh my goodness. Or this parody of Promiscuous by Nelly Furtado and Timbaland, which just takes the original song title literally and makes the song about
every guy I sleep with says the same thing. Let me guess, you got a rash on your ding-a-ling.
sex sexists. That's it. That's the joke. Or this parody of Umbrella, but made to be about Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and sex sexists. That's it. That's the joke. Now, obviously, I am being very facetious, being a little reductive, but honestly, Mad was also just kind of mean to a lot of the women celebrities. Like, haha, Madonna's an old hag at 45 years old. She's not that old, guys. Or, haha, Shakira can't speak English and just covers it up with weird dancing. Or, haha, Whitney Houston is such a mess. What I'm saying is that going from the MADtv to the Bart Baker era, absolutely nothing changed. The 2000s, everybody! Yay! Now, I already talked about so many skits, but if you have a favorite MADtv sketch or character or video, one that's just lingered in your head for years, please, please, please let me know. Just leave it in the comments, because in researching for this video, I realized that reminiscing about this show takes me back to a time when I still felt something. I also just remembered what this next section of this video is going to be about. Oh god. Where's my drink? Something that MADtv was noted for was the diversity of its cast. MADtv has always had at least 1 to 2 black male performers and at least 1 black woman performer in the cast. It was also pretty refreshing to hear that there were talented writers of color as well, like Dylan Shepard and Colton Dunn. So it's cool to know that even behind the camera, there were also folks of color helping shape what the show would be. The show will also see Hispanic representation in its cast, with performers like Nelson Asensio, Jill Michelle Malayan, and Angela Johnson. And of course, Bobby Lee, who was surprisingly enough the first, and for a long time the only, person of Asian descent who was part of the main cast of
MADtv or SNL.
This cast diversity potentially translated to the demographics of the viewers of the show. According to anecdotal stories from the cast, a lot of the biggest fans of the show back when it was on were of Hispanic descent. MADtv was particularly popular in big cities, even edging out Saturday Night Live at times. In that sense, MADtv felt very ahead of its time. But unfortunately, there was some not so great stuff happening behind the scenes that negatively impacted the folks of color who worked there. For instance, when Deborah Wilson, who was the longest-running member of the original cast, had left MADtv in the 8th season, it was a mystery as to why. In an interview with Comedy Hype, she cites this as the reason.
I recognize that there are people who came in after me. I was a tenured a cast member from the beginning, from pilot, and people were coming in after me making more than me. I realized that there was, white male cast members who were coming in after me making more than me. I went, okay, can we talk about this? And the answer essentially was no.
Wow. Really?
When I was told that all the things you want to create and be on the show has a monetary value, and we don't value it as much as the new people coming in, that's when I left.
That's not great. I can understand how this would be super disrespectful and how that would push someone to leave, let alone one of your best and most versatile performers who had stayed on for so many years. Also, Bobby Lee relays this troubling story on his podcast where he and a Hispanic performer were newcomers and not given opportunities to act on skits, whereas the new white guys were, according to him. And so this happened.
And then so I remember her coming into my dressing room crying. She goes, "This is fucked up." I go, "What is it?" She's like, "Well, I mean, you're Asian, I'm Hispanic, and we're not gay, right? I'm going to go to the president of the, of the company.
Fox?
No, of the show, the guy that owns the show."
Oh.
And I grabbed her by the wrist. I go, "Please don't." I go, "And if you do, leave my name out of it.
We will be fired."
Yeah. And she's like, "No, I'm making a stink. This is bullshit." She goes, knocks on his door, and just went into a cry fest. Right? 2 weeks later, I never saw her again.
You got fired.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
And I was in nothing, and I just...
And obviously, I'm really just basing it off this story, but this anecdote does paint a picture of a workplace where folks of color were not only underutilized, but also seen as disposable. But one cast member who seemed to have really gotten the shaft was Jordan Peele. When Jordan was still on the show, he was offered a job on Saturday Night Live, and this was a great opportunity for him that he really wanted. But his contract arranged by the higher-ups at MAD prevented him from taking the SNL job. This led him down a path of self-pity and substance issues. Quoting from an article by Chris Gardner for The Hollywood Reporter, Jordan recalled blaming MADtv producers for using my fate as chess pieces. And then a light bulb switched on in his head. I wanted to be a producer. These producers are making these decisions about art and comedy, and they didn't know anything about art and comedy. I want to be a producer and bring my artistry to that, and they'll all be sorry. And now, it makes me think, would he have gotten the drive to help co-create Key and Peele, or create some of the most critically acclaimed horror movies of the 2010s had it not been for MADtv's constricting contractual arrangements? I don't know. All of this is just to illustrate the typical Hollywood scumminess that unfortunately affected a lot of performers of color back in the 2010s. And this is all just behind the scenes stuff. Like, what about the actual content of the sketches themselves? Now for this next part, the last thing I want to do is to accuse cast members or performers and make them out to be the problem. Sketch comedy is an extremely collaborative effort involving so many people, so many moving parts, and these artistic decisions had to have gone through several people before they reached people's televisions. Really, what I want to do is to just highlight certain sketches or characters and try to untangle the elements that made these things not age well. Let's start with MADTV's most famous character, Miss Swan.
You nice lady to help me, Linda.
Yeah.
Miss Swan.
Okay, Miss Swan. Great.
It sucks when one of your most popular characters is accused of yellowface, but anyway. See, in universe, she was canonically from the fictional country of Cordovia, near the North Pole. The character was supposedly inspired by Alex Borstein's Hungarian grandmother, and partially inspired by Icelandic singer Björk.
Time people tell me I look like a Bjork.
You look like a Buick?
I look like a Bjork, you know, the singer from Iceland.
But a lot of people mistook Miss Swan for being a purely Asian character.
You fucking said
I
that?
swear on my life, I thought you played Miss Swan.
Wow.
Because I know you played Connie Chung, I know you played a lot of characters, but I also thought you were...
Give the Range Rover.
Wasn't Miss Swan supposed to be Asian?
Oh, thanks for doing this, man.
It was more like, of course he would play all the Asian characters. He's the only Asian guy on the show. Miss Swan is Asian. Of course that's Bobby Lee.
But Miss Swan wasn't Asian.
She wasn't?
No.
Can we see a photo?
No, I know Alex Borstein is not, but the character
the character was more Bjorky.
And this was not an isolated incident. I saw a news article that reported Miss Swan as being Asian-born. And it's not hard to see where this mistake came from. I'll just say the fact that she works in a beauty salon, that broken English, and this specific accent.
Hello, foxy lady. Did it talk for you? I put everything in my mouth.
All stereotypes associated with Asian Americans. Even the shirt underneath her apron is in the style of Chinese garments. And even at the time, in the unwoke 2000s, people still had a problem with this. In the year 2000, the Media Action Network for Asian Americans requested MADTV's producers to either get a real Asian American to play her or not use the character at all. And obviously that didn't happen. Ken Narasaki, an Asian American actor and writer, penned an open letter to the cast saying, "We're angry because not only are we barely visible on TV, when some white actress creates an annoying Asian character based on a lousy stereotype, the producer refuses to take her off the air, and we feel dissed and disenfranchised." And honestly, yeah, I'm glad that there's generally more awareness now with media perpetuating negative stereotypes associated with marginalized groups, especially when those involved aren't from said groups. However you feel about the issue, I think we can all agree that there is no way this would be aired now. Cheers! On the subject of race, I'm going to highlight another recurring sketch that is so buck wild that I feel like I need to give a little bit of a preamble or else you wouldn't even believe me. So in the 60s, there was this show, My Mother the Car, where some guy's dead mom gets body swapped with his car. Now, the idea of this body swap premise to sustain a television show was just so inane and so nonsensical that it stuck in the minds of TV nerds back in the day, even being parodied on the Simpsons spin-off Showcase episode with the Love-matic grandpa. Now, someone, or whoever on MADtv just thought, what if we did that with a sitcom, but with a white guy and a black mom?
Don't make me break my foot off in your ass! Smell the stank of a woman on you.
Honey, that's just your tuna and cheese.
Path of ruination, dissipation, and transplantation. Just tell the truth. Tell the truth and it will set you free. Testify!
Alright, so That's My White Mama was a recurring skit, and I'll give it this, Artie Lang puts a lot of energy into this character.
Bob Marley, you one of them lazy-ass pot-smoking Jamaicans? Shaquata, I told you never to bring no convicts in my house!
After the initial shock of the premise wears off, it just kind of weirdly becomes a bad sitcom, honestly.
Because he loves me and I love him.
You love him?
Granted, the skit itself pokes fun at how offensive it's being more than once.
Our work here is done. The Ku Klux Klan. That's my white mama.
I just think it's not good. Again, no hate to Artie Lang, who did this skit, 30 years ago? And it wasn't just the race stuff either. Let's take this one skit where a couple is waiting to be seated at a restaurant, and then this happens.
And green beans.
Now, admittedly, some of the humor arises from the tension between seeing this poor hostess struggle and the couple who want to help her out but can't, I think.
What are you doing?
I'm trying to help you.
Come here. Come here next to me. Is that good?
I have seen defenses of the skit saying it actually highlights the condescending way that people treat the disabled and shed lights on the lack of wheelchair accessibility, but I can also see how some people would just interpret this as ableism. There are so many other skits I could highlight. You could just watch one full episode from pretty much any season and realize just how much insane stuff we all weirdly got away with in the 90s and 2000s. I am 2 misguided slurs away from something happening to my liver, I swear to God. But there is one skit I want to highlight as far as things not aging well. Warning, extremely crude and uncomfortable jokes aimed at the expense of younger folks. If that may upset you, please skip to this timestamp. Okay, so in 1998, the video for Baby One More Time by Britney Spears was released, and MADtv released a parody of it. And the joke of it is that Britney, who was 16 years old, really wants to...
I'm just 16, but I just can't wait. You're big like daddy, all open wide, put it inside.
Hello, Chris Hansen. I wanted to get other people's opinions on this sketch, so I showed this to some of my friends who happen to be Britney Spears stans. They looked at me like this, and then they cut off contact with me forever. I probably deserve it, let's be real. I just wish Mad hadn't made Britney the butt of the joke, but they just chose the funnier option. Again, people were very, very, very mean to women celebrities. Okay, so the thing is, I do not want MADtv to be known for its worst attributes and skits. I don't necessarily want to excuse all the stuff that I just talked about, but I also want to give the show a fair shake. There were some skits that were not only very funny and beloved, but legitimately righteous in their messaging. There's this one recurring skit I've always liked called Inside Looking Out, featuring an interracial couple played by Nicole Parker and Jordan Peele. The fictional couple started a television show to talk about living as an interracial couple, except Nicole's character is...
Realize that the color of skin does not matter, whether it's black
or normal. And he comes to us from the wild and untamed region of the Congo.
Chicago. He's from...
I tripped trying to run away from a strange dark man following me in his car.
I was picking her up at 7 like I was.
Nicole Parker and Jordan Peele co-wrote this skit together, and that makes a lot of sense. Just because it's really reminiscent of the work that Jordan would be most known for. In fact, Brian Joseph from Spin.com writes about this skit. Get Out aims for the head, and Inside Looking Out aims for the belly-holding guffaws. But a decade and a half apart, they're tied together in how they carefully but quickly escalate the inherent tensions of interracial dating. America at large acknowledges the socially fraught dynamics of interracial dating, but it still grounds for uproarious material when those dynamics are pushed to the forefront in absurd fashion. That's a genuinely detailed and thoughtful insight for a show that also gave us this skit. Going further back to an earlier era of MADtv, there was this one-off sketch that takes place in a 50s diner where black patrons played by Ari Spears and Deborah Wilson are discriminated against because, the 50s.
Some menus, please. Oh, that ain't gonna be happening, dark stuff.
Wait a minute, that's crazy.
And the sketch just escalates and escalates, becoming more and more like the 50s, until Aries and Deborah storm out, leading to this moment.
And you know what? In 10 years, I'm gonna come back here with the Black Panthers and we're gonna burn this mother down. For somebody that likes the 50s, let me show you a little bit of something I saw on I Love Lucy.
The WB Network has started production on the first black teen soap opera, Devon's Creek. We take you now to the set.
I also want to highlight this skit called Devon's Creek, which makes fun of the performativeness of TV execs soullessly pandering to marginalized groups without getting their input.
This makes me sick that the African American is not heard in this country.
Excuse me, Liz?
Not now.
In 2001, MADtv was so ahead of its time, I swear to God. Now, around this time, Saturday Night Live got a lot of praise for its topical political satire. And there were not that many instances that MADtv would make commentary about political topics. But when they did, they could be really funny and surprisingly clever. A fan favorite is this skit of Michael McDonald as Steve Jobs unveiling a new product for Apple called the iRack. And in the 2000s, it becomes very clear throughout the sketch what this is meant to be an allegory for.
This is the Iraq as we intended. Mission accomplished.
Don't put more in the Iraq, it'll collapse on itself.
Wrong. What the Iraq needs is more things.
Like, gee, I wonder what this could possibly be about. I mean, yeah, you could say that it's like obvious, that it's very on the nose, but if it was that on the noseness that made MADTV's commentary on US's response to the situation in Iraq all the more palatable to a wider audience of young people, or people who found SNL or Daily Show's commentary too tedious or over their heads. Look, MADtv is not the perfect show, and some of it really just did not age well. And if you find that Mad has just one too many problematic skits for you to fully get into the show, I totally understand. And for the people who are like, you can't even make jokes anymore, cancel culture ruined everything. Okay, leave a comment then. Also, I listened to so many interviews with cast and crew members, and believe it or not, a lot of these guys are actually pretty sensitive and down to earth, some of whom even espouse progressive ideals. I don't think any of them that I've heard are these edgy, always angry at the woke mob edgelords that you might think that they are. But with all that said, I just think that MADtv was, above all, a necessary show for the 90s and 2000s. On one hand, it carried the mantle for being the edgy, lowbrow, accessible show for people who felt alienated by SNL, which felt stiff and corporate and advertiser-pleasing in comparison. On the other hand, Mad was just a perfect snapshot of the culture, reflecting back people's thoughts, prejudices, and anxieties back to them, and even making us think. Yes, I am talking about the show that gave us this. On my YouTube community tab, when I already knew that I was going to make this video about MADtv, I mentioned in my poll that I would be talking about a TV show that acquired a cult online following. Now, I buried the lead a little bit on that one, so I want to unpack what this means through the lens of my own personal experiences with MADtv. See, I was there from the very beginning of YouTube. I was there for all of it. The lag, the 240p, the lag. And I remember in these early years, so meaning before 2010, specifically trying to find Saturday Night Live skits on YouTube. And take note, this was before the official SNL YouTube channel from NBC existed, only getting set up in 2013. And looking for these SNL sketches, you know, the ones that had a lot of buzz in the news, or some that had a notable celebrity guest appearance, I remember trying to find these skits freely available on YouTube, and with the exception of the Lonely Island stuff, I was not able to find them. I know now that this was just probably a skill issue on my part. Maybe I was just searching for the wrong terms, or I could have just torrented. Maybe. I still don't know how to torrent. I need someone to show me. I need an adult to show me how to do that. I just need an adult in general. Anyway, I'm realizing now that these SNL skits were particularly hard to find, probably because, even in those early days, NBC kept such a tight leash on freebooted content, and they could just strike down any freebooted, illegally uploaded, copyright-infringing clip that was just on YouTube. So if you wanted to watch, I don't know, SNL's Debbie Downer on YouTube during this time, you were out of luck. However, my first experience with MAD was in the mid-2000s. A friend of mine had shown me the Memoirs of a Geisha movie trailer parody with Bobby Lee.
That's not true. This is just another movie about a poor but beautiful girl turned into a hooker. But this time, she's Asian.
And I still remember how hard I laughed. I remember my stomach hurting from laughing. I was like, this is, as the kids say, peak. And I wanted more. I needed more. Come to find out that this is from a sketch show called MADtv. And searching MADtv on YouTube just yielded more results, more funny videos. I didn't even know what I was looking for specifically. I just wanted more. And I want to give a special mention to those videos that got really big on the internet, which were pop song parodies. Look, I am basically an expert on YouTube pop song parodies at this point. That's how it works, right? You make one video on a thing, and then you're an expert on it. And that's why misinformation no longer exists in 2025. Anyway, I can tell you now that some of the first ever pop music video parodies that got huge on YouTube were copyright infringing videos from MADtv. I can tell you some of these videos with music in them, they got big. Like this Shakira parody with Mo Collins. I remember getting 66 million views in a now deleted video.
Because look, we were the first ones to do the music parodies.
Right.
We did that before.
Yeah, way before, yeah.
And so it's like all of that stuff would have been posted. And sadly, the only thing that's out there now is what some folks manage to get on their VHS or whatever and get it up on YouTube. And they are, I mean, they're mega hits out there still.
So it was the pop song parodies along with the other skits like Can I Have Your Number and Bon Qui Qui, all becoming massively viral. We're talking millions of views each across multiple videos in an era when that number was just impossible to fathom. I do not doubt that there is a pretty sizable number of folks out there who learned of MADtv through clips on YouTube, preferably in 240p, the way God intended. At the time these clips started surfacing on the website, MADtv was still airing new episodes, so a lot of the pop culture references and impersonations would still feel timely and topical in the mid-2000s. Also, the whole thing with MAD being edgy and lowbrow and immature, it was just too perfect for the internet and YouTube, where most of the early viewers who spent all their time on the site were bored, edgy, loner teenagers who had a keen eye for pop culture. It's me. I'm just describing myself. And even though the performers and writers never saw a dime from these YouTube uploads, which is very unfortunate, I still do feel for them. I think this could have still had a positive impact on the show. For one, to my knowledge, to this day, the only places to watch full MADtv episodes are sketchy download websites and weird, obscure streaming services where the cast and crew still don't see a dime from their involvement anyway. So these skits on YouTube are for sure the most accessible way to enjoy the best parts of the show, ensuring that these skits are still viewable to curious younger generations who want a glimpse of a time gone by. But on a personal note, at the time, in the mid-2000s, MADtv was actually syndicated in my country on a cable channel called Jack TV. And it was through these freebooted clips on YouTube that compelled me to stay up really late to actually catch MADtv. Sorry, Mom. It did air on a weird time slot and even aired episodes several months too late, but at least I still got to watch the goddamn show. So you would think that with this newfound audience, Fox would realize the potential of MADtv. I feel like there would have been more of an online fan community that would have developed. So why did that not happen? Well, from the start, MADtv was meant to compete with SNL, airing on roughly the same time slot. SNL was specifically struggling when MADtv started, but quickly bounced back, becoming very relevant in the late 90s and 2000s. This led MADtv to decline overall in the ratings. Additionally, MADtv had reportedly 1/3 of the budget that SNL had, and that was a budget that was continuously being slashed. Because they were given so little funding relative to the other shows on Fox, multiple cast and crew called the show the red-headed stepchild of the network. Their words, not mine. I mean, sketch comedy is expensive. You have to build unique sets and design costumes and hair for just 3 to 6 minute segments. Plus, a lot of the more seasoned and celebrated cast members at the time, like Michael McDonald and Nicole Parker and Jordan Peele, had already left by the last season. One last factor that I hadn't seen anybody bring up. You see, the 2000s were a particularly big decade for parody movies, spoof movies. It started with Scary Movie, Not Another Teen Movie, Superhero Movie, Movie probably. But the people really responsible for this trend were a pair of directors called Jason Friedberg and Aaron Seltzer. They were responsible for running this formula to the ground, with parody movies like Date Movie, Epic Movie, Meet the Spartans. These were basically flops, bombs, and widely derided by critics and the public, culminating in one of the last movies of theirs released that decade, Disaster Movie.
I am Iron Man. From the guys who've seen way too many movies.
I remember when this movie released in 2008, and it shot straight up to #1 in the IMDb's bottom 100, where it's still #1 to this day. Now, what does that all have to do with MADtv? Well, for one, it probably made audiences realize how crappy and tiresome this kind of pop culture reference type humor was. This kind of, look, it's a movie that you know type humor. I just don't think MADtv was ever that corny or that cheap with its references, but it was still similar enough in style to maybe put some people off from the show. But more significantly, there were MADtv cast members starring in those terrible movies, like Ike Barinholtz, Nicole Parker, Krista Flanagan. Those last two were still known to be current cast members on Mad at the time that Disaster Movie premiered. Not just that, but these cast members were doing the same thing that they had been doing on the show, namely pop culture impressions. Nicole Parker parodied Princess Giselle from Enchanted, in which she portrays the same way she portrays her recurring character of Disney Girl on MADtv. Krista Flanagan parodied Juno, a character she also parodied in a MADtv skit. I'm not blaming the performers at all. I hope they got a good paycheck out of it. I just think that maybe this wasn't good for the image of the show. It's like, imagine if the Game of Thrones cast played their same characters they did in the show, but on the Emoji Movie. Oh, that would have been nearly as unwatchable as the last season of Game of Thrones. And so, with all of those factors and the fact that MADtv had already been airing for 14 years with declining ratings, the show was finally taken off the air by Fox in 2009. And that was the end of the show. Until it wasn't.
MADtv's signature pop culture parodies and politically incorrect humor, it's back, and it's better than ever.
The show returns to the CW tonight. Here is a sneak peek.
Yeah, at some point after Mad's cancellation, the rights to MADtv got handed over to the CW network. And the CW would then announce a MADtv reboot 20 years after the show premiered and only 7 years after it had ended. They aired 8 episodes in 2016, and it was not good. The magic was just gone. They hired a whole new cast who were pretty new to televised sketch comedy, but they would also have occasional guest appearances from some of the old cast members like Bobby Lee, Ike Barinholtz, Nicole Sullivan, among many others. A decent move, easing in this new cast by having comfortable, familiar faces and proven veterans. But it was clear that whatever had worked in the 90s and 2000s would just not fly in 2016. For instance, Mad's skewering of pop culture properties. Here's a Dora the Explorer parody, but with a more adult twist.
This is where all the rich white people live. Can you say, gringos con dinero?
Wow, like I hadn't seen that before. They had a Game of Thrones sketch. Okay, but what funny observation could you make about Game of Thrones that hasn't already been beaten to death by places like Honest Trailers, among others? The online landscape has so drastically changed how we interact with entertainment properties that side of MADtv just felt repetitive. And yeah, you could talk about changing sensibilities with regards to humor and what is and isn't okay to joke about. 2016 Mad just seemed way less willing to push the envelope, not just in tackling things that may be deemed as offensive, but even just in its style of humor. Skits got more predictable, more boilerplate. But I think the one word I would use to describe this reboot is lifeless. And this is despite the thankless job of the new cast, who seem talented and certainly trying their best.
Objectification. Of course I don't have Ashley. I respect Ashley. Cherish Ashley. Partnership means mutual trust and communication. You're doing it again.
Originally, I had a lot of problems with the character of Drusilla because she's so mean to Cinderella.
Hey guys, you all down for checking out my movie tonight? The interview?
Actually, a lot of blame has been laid on the new cast members, as is the case with 99% of reboots of beloved franchises that have a new cast. But I heard that on Bobby Lee's podcast that the way that the old cast in the 2000s was treated was royalty, compared to how substandard the working conditions in the 2016 reboot were.
You know who had it bad? The new MADtv.
Oh, those.
Dude, when we did the new MADtv, I was like, oh my God, we were in heaven. I mean, this is like you go to the craft service, there's a fucking Ritz cracker, right? And half-eaten like baby carrot.
Yeah, half-eaten.
And that's it.
Yeah. Oh man, the poor, whatever, the fucking, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where that went.
So I don't blame the new cast. Heck, in this reboot skit in 2016, with MADtv veterans like Will Sasso and Nicole Sullivan, they seem like they're phoning it in.
Bill, that's enough. That's enough. You need to go to your quiet place.
Oh, come on. If I leave, they're going to win.
Bill?
The whole vibe of the reboot just feels dull. It lacks energy. It lacks juice. And even the audience seems bored.
Now.
Oh, Blackback.
The Mexicans love me too. You've never met them. I'll introduce you. This winter.
Yeah, that's kind of one thing I found myself appreciating about old MADtv, the live studio audience, who feel like a separate character in of themselves. The way that the audience, a live audience by the way, none of it canned, would react in certain situations. Especially whenever they would explode, cheering and yelling and hollering whenever a character that they liked was introduced in a skit. It's so cheesy. It carries such a chipper 1980s sensibility to comedy, but in my opinion, it honestly just adds a lot of charm. Anyway, all this to say, the reboot of MADtv was not well received, with some scathing reviews stating, "The new MADtv can't help but seem like an off-brand version of the original, which was an off-brand SNL to begin with. The sketches repeatedly rely on obvious jokes, and the general vibe just seems low rent, even when compared to its Fox predecessor. And the only thing offensive about this Dora the Explorer parody is the fact that it was made in 2016. Oh, harsh. And since 2016, we have not heard anything about MADtv coming back or airing new episodes. So likely MADtv will just live on in our memories and on YouTube clips. Most of the cast and crew, not all of them, but most, generally have fond memories of what they've done and what they've accomplished and the number of people that they made laugh and smile throughout the years, and that does warm my heart. I want to go back to the question that I started this video with. Why has MADtv been seemingly forgotten by folks on the internet? Was it because of the problematic nature of some of the skits that entailed negative stereotypes or maybe didn't age well? Was it because 2000s pop culture references and topics just seem stale and dated in the 2020s? Was it because in hindsight, MADtv was overshadowed by more respectable shows like In Living Color before it and Key and Peele after it? Was it because none of the cast members, except for two, would reach Hollywood superstar heights? I can't say for sure. But the more I read about MADtv and the people that enjoyed it, I almost sensed that maybe some of the disdain toward the show may be rooted in some sort of classism, maybe. I thought about this when I read what cast member Michael McDonald said. You drive onto the lot of, let's say, Warner Brothers. The security guards with the name tags would lose their minds. Oh my god, MADtv, love the show, love you. Every janitor, every assistant, every cafeteria worker, same thing. Then you got to the studio executive or the producer or the person in power, and they had never seen the show. Anybody with a name tag loved MADtv. It was a show for the average person, the working stiff. And this isn't me diminishing Mad's more problematic aspects, which I know kinda suck, but I still maintain that Mad is an important and even necessary piece of 2000s internet culture. If you still dislike the show for whatever reason, I'd recommend at least acknowledging or maybe even looking into the comedic talent behind it. And if you like the show, share your love with the creatives and talents. Rewatch some old skits and see if they hold up. All my sources are in the description as usual, but I highly recommend the podcast Mad Rewind with Brandy Stillwell if you want to hear first-hand accounts from some of the cast and crew. And remember, Mad! Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, I'm gonna continue making these videos about this weird intersection between the internet and pop culture, usually with a nostalgic twist. So if you're into that, you can stick around, and thank you so much for watching until the end. And if you're a returning viewer, oh, it's been another long time, hasn't it? Another almost 2 months have passed, but you know what? I am back in the swing of things. The holidays got really busy, but now I'm back once every 2 to 3 weeks, baby. I already have my next video ideas planned. I already have new things planned for the channel, but I just appreciate that you're still here. Thank you so much for sticking around. I appreciate you so much. Bye-bye. Take care.